I'm John Hopwood. I'm running as a Democrat for state rep in District 17 of the U.S.
Even the ball dog kept me by Teddy.
Sullivan, my English teacher at West High, knowing I dreamed of traveling to faraway places, told me that one day I'd return. He was right. I've told you about my connection to Manchester's past. Let me tell you about my commitment to the future.
If they move, kill them.
I don't have to tell you, Manchester is in trouble. The folks in Concord haven't been doing a good job marketing our city to the high-tech businesses.
What a dump.
That were located 55 miles from a place recently cited as the 7th.
She was bred in old Kentucky, but she's only a crumb up here. She's not neat and double-jointed with a cauliflower ear. Someday we shall be married, and if vegetables get too dear, I'll cut myself a nice big slice of her cauliflower ear.
From store 6. Hope stop you. I'm sorry. This is what it's like.
And the future of Manchester
Okay, go.
depends on
I'm from store 66. My name is Alex Lizel, born and raised in Manchester. This isn't about money, wages. This isn't about who's running the business. It's about our family and Arthur T. We want him running it because this is the way it's been run forever. It's traditional.
Hi,
It's all about the family.
I'm John Hopwood. I'm running for state rep from Ward 10. I'm the freelance writer and editor in an Army.
Thank you.
I was raised in Manchester, but spent much of my adult life in other places before I returned home.
Hi, this is Joe Moose Elber, and we're at the Hamer's house today celebrating John Hopwood running for state rep of Alderman 10, and something about 17. I don't know what the hell the 17 is. But, you know, so I'm calling out 3 people today to do the ALS challenge. And I'm going to count on number 1 is Mayor Gatsis, and I'm calling out Patrick Arnold and the infamous John Hopwood. Okay? So I'm calling out those 3 people, and watch it. Ah!
Cause that ain't ration.
Wow.
If they move, kill them.
Hi, and welcome to Ward 13 with John Hopwood and Jim O'Connell. We've already talked enough for about 2 or 3 shows.
And Ross
Ross
Terrio has showed
Terrio's
up.
here.
All right,
You're going to
well,
have to be over there.
There you are. Look
We
at
were
that.
just, I was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
talking to Jim O'Connell, who said that, was it the last school board meeting was the worst that you had ever seen?
That's what I came in last night. She said
Enough
that.
about you, Jim. The reason why was some escaped circus clown came up there and badmouthed me during public comments. Would you happen to know who that was, Mr. Hopwood?
Are we talking about the penultimate one, or wasn't there one yesterday?
diatribe, the harangue.
You did say he thought, because Joyce put the comment section, like in the middle.
Yeah.
And so I had to go to the head, as you'd say, if you're in the U.S., as a Marine would say. So he sends me a message, quitter, says, "Oh, I'm adding you to the speech," which I had enough time that I did.
Yeah, it was quite the.
Your
Soliloquy.
pseudo legalistic gibberish.
I'm quite lost actually. So you spoke after that meeting? Is that what
I
happened?
spoke
We
at the
spoke,
meeting
yes.
when they considered you, the young organizers,
United.
Oh,
United.
yes, I got it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you
And
spoke before
Was
the
that
meeting.
was that a Leninist organization or a Trotsky?
I actually think it has something to do with Jacques Derrida, but my French is
Actually, I
not
met.
bad.
I will be honest. I met with the girls. from
Terrio,
Y-
your mic's you're having problems with your mic.
All right. I met with the girls from YLU today. They're all lovely. I greatly enjoyed our meeting.
You're going to use sexist language.
Oh, lighten up, Francis.
Yes, yeah. Lovely's all
They,
right.
they
I
were
think
nice.
lovely's
They
all
were
right.
very nice people, and I enjoyed our meeting. We.
Oh, people! Now you're going to be speciesist. We're going to get.
this is
We're
gonna-
going to get you.
Oh, you just can't win with this guy.
Are you running for Senate?
Oh, I have this breaking news. I signed up for state rep today in the float. Wards
Oh,
4,
so
5,
you're
6,
welcome
and
on
7.
the show. We,
Yeah.
we can put the mic on now.
Oh, I'm unfortunately, my friend Ben Baruti, who I greatly admire and respect, that's his former seat. I don't know if he's retiring or running again.
Well,
Chris-
if he's retired, he would be running again because that's a perfect job for a retiree, isn't it?
No, I don't know if he's. I think he might be retiring from the state as a state rep. I know that Chris.
You in the Flotarial now?
Yes, 43, which is 4, 5, 6, and 7. Four
That
wards.
means I can campaign
so
against you. in
who's
Chris Hebert, Chris Herbert.
Chris Herbert, yeah.
He's the state rep for that ward.
Right.
He's not in the Flotarial.
Yes, he is.
He
Yeah,
is.
yeah, and
He's
then-
not the Litchfield.
And then no.
Oh,
That's
you're not Litchfield.
No, I'm not Litchfield. That's 7. That's 8, 9 in Litchfield. That's
So I can't
Sparkborough.
campaign against you?
No, well, you could. You could come. You can campaign against anybody. You can come to the school board and say bad things about
You're
me
not
like
going to
you
be at
did.
the dump?
No,
Oh,
I'll be at
man.
our dump,
So who would-
dumping my own stuff. But Richard Comey's also running, a perennial candidate.
Who's he?
He's an African guy. He
African American?
no. He has an accent. I think he's from Africa. But,
Oh, so he can't be an African American. No, we've got you nationalists. We're going to
anyways,
get you.
he's
We're going to have a checklist
Yeah,
next.
he's a perennial candidate. I've seen his speeches on the public TV. You know when they give you the free 3 minutes or whatever
Right.
it is.
Yep.
He's made. I don't think he's ever won. I don't know if he's ever won before, but I've seen his speeches on the 22 or 23 or whatever it was.
When
you should run.
do
When do you have to
when
have
do-
it right?
yeah, I don't have it. I don't have. Yeah, actually,
perfect.
You know, I went last night before the board, if you remember, and I wanted
school board.
the school board,
Yeah.
and I wanted and I the precursor to my the preamble to my rambling was this issue about telling everybody that I recognize the fact that they were there and the effort that they were making. I wanted everybody to understand that because I was going to go to this other place, which I didn't want to be throwing brickbats, but I did want to make the point that I thought that starting with Joyce's, Mayor Craig's running of that meeting and all the way down to the meeting, and we don't have to re-litigate it all here, but I did think it reached a new level of discord and
Jim,
behavior.
you know, it'd be better
and
if
effort.
you move over here, and then Ross, we can move in a little. It's
All
fine.
right,
Like these
all
other
right,
chairs?
all right, here we go. All right,
Move
Chairs
over
without the
here.
music?
Right, you bring your chair here.
I'll sing while we're moving.
Because then
Okay,
you
yeah.
can-
You tell us what to do, Stalin.
You
Yeah.
are Mr. Education.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So,
Wow,
so anyway, I went
more
to-
than me.
Yeah. I went before there last night just to kind of make that comment, and what I didn't have time to say or be more lucid about was the fact that I was really saying that, like, I was observing the teachers, people representing their content in the room, and the bottom line is sort of everybody in that room all knows that there's a resource problem. At least most of them do, right? And the challenge, and it's been my frustration. You and I have talked about it. My frustration is we can't shift the conversation to how do we solve the resource problem. And the connection between the two things was when there was such, divergence of views and the sort of anger and all the other things that came into the previous meeting about a almost arcane thing in one side. I know people took it very seriously, but it was an ad hoc committee to look at doing something for the committee. You were 3 decisions away from a board vote or anything that would change anything. And so it seemed to me, how are we ever going to get this diverse group of people on that board who seem to be very different in their views to talk about like just like the teacher who came up last night and talked about she's earning $500 a week and she's got two other jobs, or the other people that came up. It's too easy, and I'm not saying people are maligning teachers. I didn't see evidence of that, but we all know that there's a problem with the per diem for subs. We're paras, we can't get them. We're not paying them enough. We could argue about teacher pay and compensation if you want, but I don't think anybody would make the argument that teachers are getting overpaid and we're turning them away in thousands because they're trying to come here.
That sounds like Joe Lavasser.
No, well, it's just not true. So then the question should be like, if everybody calmed the rhetoric and you forget about people who don't like unions and the MEA and just let's talk about members of our community. And in the end, I know everybody says it's all about the kids, but how do we, like, as a group of people with different political views, get to a point of, first of all, comity, so we can actually talk to each other, and then to a point where we can reach a decision, which is going to be difficult, because if the answer was easy, all of us know that's
That's why
easy.
they call them problems.
Exactly.
They're not easy.
But
John Hopwood doesn't understand that, but Jim O'Connell.
Well, I don't have any kids,
So it
part of the tragedy of
it
my
just seems to me we could, because we could easily, and then not everybody would be happy, we could easily unite as a city and say we're going to take a full onslaught to senators and state government and say that's going to have to stop. We want to see changes there, or then let's combine with our senators and go and to our federal delegation go right to Washington D.C. and say, well, there's underfunding. This is a major problem there, but we can't seem to stop pointing fingers at people
Wasn't
about.
that the premise of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
But then
Yes, it was.
Then
Yes,
there's
it was.
John Hopwood, who last time you were on called for Art Beaudry to resign as vice chair, and you made a stirring defense for him on social media that he's the best vice chair ever, because we couldn't remember either Mao's or
Mao was Zhou
Stalin's.
Enlai, and then Khrushchev was...
No, Zhou Enlai was the premier.
Oh, yeah, it's just a lieutenant. It's probably...
I think Art Beaudry should resign, but that's a whole show to
You're
itself.
talking about chairman, and for a minute there,
Vice chair.
I was the vice chair. I was trying to think about the gentleman who was the vice chair for a long time before Arthur.
Who was it?
Sarah Ambrosi, and then, Dave Gelinas.
Dave Gelinas, yeah. Dave Gelinas was
He actually retired when I took over.
Yeah,
so
three
this
elections
is his
ago,
old
right?
seat.
Oh, is
And
it?
He was the youngest. He got elected. The first time he got elected, he was 18 years old. This is back in... He's got to be in his 60s now, so that was probably...
70s, yeah. 70? When did he retire?
When I ran
three
in
elections
30,
ago,
so
right?
he left office in 12, and I got elected in 12.
Right,
So
right.
I'm sorry, 13.
Yeah, so 3 terms ago.
Yeah.
And Dave Gelinas, because Dave was there a long time, and
And his dad was the alderman for the
Right.
board.
Yeah,
Fern.
So Dave
Fern Gelinas,
and Dave, you got an incoming call, or you had?
Oh, we can try. Hi, welcome to Ward 13 with John Hopwood and Jim O'Connell.
And
Well, we don't consider him, he's just a guest.
it's Ross Terrio.
Ross who? Speak up and let yourself be known.
I'm sorry. This is Phil. How you guys doing?
Good, Phil.
Hi, Phil. How are you?
I'm well. How are you guys doing?
Hanging in
So
there.
far, so good.
Pretty good.
Jim, you know me pretty well, as does Ross. You might think I'm calling about the contract or about
Healthcare benefits.
whatever.
Former teacher, right?
I had
He is
sworn
a
to
teacher.
myself I wasn't going
he's
to call.
Oh, go
All I
ahead.
heard, and this has nothing to do with politics or the contract or the lack of the contract or the needs of the students or the health care that the school board siphoning off the budget. What struck me, and I called because I want to stick up for a friend,
Go-
is John Hopwood is calling out Art Beaudry to resign.
Yeah.
Let me say this, and I'm going to hang up before I
Before you get but tongue lashed.
No, let me say this. Arthur Beaudry, whether you agree or disagree with him, has done more for this community as a firefighter, as a school board member, and as a citizen than in his sleep than you could ever do.
Oh, that's a bunch of crap. And
You can't say that on the
who the
air.
hell
can't,
who are you to say
I'll
that?
stand by it. I'll stand by it on the phone or face to face.
Phil, I agree with you. Phil, you're right.
And
What a bunch of malarkey. And we're hanging up on you. We're giving
not
you
hanging up.
the Joe Lavasser thumb.
The Stalin thumb.
and I have to say,
Art Beaudry's
Art
a
Beaudry's a
not
great
well-meaning
citizen.
person that can't
Very
see
passionate,
the forest
he's a
but
hard
for the
worker.
trees. So what about
Armand
hard
Forrest. What are you saying about Armand Forrest?
there's a few things that I'd like to say about Art Beaudry.
Oh, go ahead.
So the first one is, I consider Art Beaudry, and we haven't seen it since he's been chair as much, But Art Beaudry, what I liked, the first thing I liked most about Art Beaudry, besides the things that Phil talks about his previous services, but as a school board
Passionate.
member,
He wears his heart on his
well,
sleeve.
he was a contrarian at a time where
Is Jim's microphone working? We can move this one more over.
or we can grab
I'm getting
one
a thing
each.
they can't hear you.
That would be a shame. So, it's mine's
Oh, you
working.
can
okay,
hear them?
all right,
Okay.
thanks.
I'm getting.
So our
Those
board,
are voices.
there was a time on the board where everybody was going in lockstep, regardless of party affiliation or anybody else. But there was only Art Beaudry and the committee woman from War II were sort of the two outliers on the committee. Deb Gagnon, yes, and what I liked about
another person named in the lawsuit that cost us $150,000.
so whether you agree or not, when things were pretty dire in the district a number of times, and Art Beaudry, I use the word contrarian because he was never going to take the soup, as we say in Ireland, right? He was all the Kool-Aid. Okay, so like he wasn't buying the party line. In other words, when Ted Gatzis wanted to say whatever he wanted to say, or if it was pick the other side, whoever's representing Dan O'Neill or whatever it was, Art Beaudry was willing to take his own road. And so I know he doesn't use email, which I think is a problem with that, but he was always available by phone. He always answered his phone, and so I think he deserves credit for.
What about the $150,000?
I don't know about that, but a lot of people.
What do you mean you don't know about it?
A lot of public representatives of the city of Manchester have spoon-fed me garbage over the years, even the ones I like, and I like most of them. But they've spoon-fed me the party line or what I wanted to hear. And when it came to it, they didn't, they were unwilling to take any risk. And Art Beaudry does bug me sometimes because he talks beyond the close, like he gets into something and he keeps on and on about it, but his passion, his commitment.
I'm not in the feedback loop.
Yeah.
And so I come in and I see somebody that probably shouldn't be on the school board. And
very passionate about
April 18th, 2017, Paul Feely, Manchester Schools settled discrimination suit. The Manchester School District has agreed to pay the family of a former Manchester High School Central student $150,000 to settle a federal lawsuit against the district. He was named in the lawsuit.
Doesn't matter.
A former superintendent and several school board members. Listen, they violated the privacy of the kid, who was an African American too, as well as being an immigrant from Africa. $150,000. What do there seems to be a thing.
What did they do? What was done? What was the claim?
Well, I
vaguely recall this, but
they had an agreement with them, and
agreement with what? No, they revealed the name of a minor. They revealed the name of a minor.
They actually posted it on the school website. So the IT department made a huge mistake and posted it on the website. It was caught, and
that was all, right?
But that's not Arthur's fault.
Art went forward with the information.
I don't think he did.
It's in the lawsuit. You're telling me, as a school board member, you don't know about this lawsuit.
I know about the lawsuit, but the lawsuit had to do with the information being private information being published.
He was one of the defendants.
Yeah, but it was settled. It had to do with.
What does that mean? It settled for $150,000, which came out of the taxpayers.
It had to be. The major thing was that it was
published on the website. Do you want me to read that lawsuit when Rich Gerard is?
Do you want to lose every last viewer that you have? The last two.
Yeah.
You can read it and you will lose them.
No. How can you defend that? And that's $150,000.
And I'll be leaving in 10 minutes. Just whatever happens here, I don't want to be seen as me walking out. I leave in 10 minutes.
Why are you going to get sued? Are you afraid to talk about racism?
No, well,
I know you're not.
One of the few people.
But I don't know how you could not know about this lawsuit.
I do know about the lawsuit, but the involvement of Arthur Beaudry is sort of grayed out to me.
It's a very tenuous, non-existent connection.
It's not a non-existent. He was a defendant in a lawsuit. For revealing the information. No, they didn't. Were you in the lawsuit?
I don't think so.
Is it because he was the vice chair or chair? Is that
no, because they claim that he was one of the people that leaked.
Right. But then it goes to motive, right, and actions, right? Did he actually say, I'm going to leak the name of somebody, and secondly, I'm going to leak
it
because
of... Are all people that are racist and that cause things, all those people are Simon Legrees?
No, I
Is
don't.
there anything like
I don't know.
institutional
How,
racism?
yeah,
I
but
can tell you that lawyers like to name as many people as possible.
But they didn't
cast
name
a
everybody.
wide
They
drag
didn't
net.
name everybody, did they?
They named several people.
So,
name? Were you on the
so
board with
before
them?
I depart,
I was, but they didn't name me.
before I
Why?
depart,
Did you leak the information?
No.
before I depart,
Right, so you weren't
It
named.
never got to trial. They never really did a whole lot of...
Because they settled it. You're being
Can I have another drink
ridiculous.
of water?
Well,
So-
you're defending the indefensible.
Do you see this harangue that I'm putting up with now, this diatribe?
What-
Multiply
what-
that by
oh, so
10, and
I
you see
live
his
in a
personal
city.
attack on me at the school.
I live
He
in a
did?
city.
And I have thick skin, so I like John.
But that was...
But it was a dirty, under the belt, low blow what he
it
did.
wasn't.
But I let it go because I'm a nice guy.
You made
I
gotta leave you
a
guys-
ridiculous legalistic
I gotta leave you
argument.
guys to fight about this after
Oh,
I
you-
depart in a few
you
minutes.
I don't
take
leave,
my
but
foot
hang
off.
on with
But my
us,
foot-
Jim. Why are you
pardon?
leaving so early?
Well, I want to go to Board of
Well,
Mayor
we
and
all
Alderman
are
meeting
going.
starting at 8.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go to confession.
No, I've been there 4 times already today.
I
And
doubt that.
enjoyed sitting 5 minutes after each one.
After
that
tonight, you're gonna
Catholic
have to go
guilt,
back.
it's a
Oh, it's
wonderful
going to
thing.
be, I'm telling you, it's going to be a wonderful Alderman meeting tonight.
You
It's gonna
think?
be a lot
Yeah,
of this
Lavasse
budget.
is whipping
Yeah,
up the...
yeah. So that's what I wanted to talk. So I was going to say, look, I don't want to spend any time. I want to reiterate the fact that Art Boardry is okay in my book,
Yep.
and
Oh,
Okay,
sure,
and
it cost
and then-
150 grand.
Okay, and then I wanted to talk about like where we are because the serious situation for whoever's watching this program, it is only available in Manchester. So Manchester taxpayers and Manchester residents and Manchester children's parents and grandparents are watching this, and they have to know the circumstances we find ourselves in.
Yeah.
And I, you know, it's another serious year, right? We're trapped in this thing. I'd like to
It's a
say,
cycle.
Plenty
Well,
of loot
one-
disappears.
One of the
on
things,
the,
let me tie this into Art Boardry for a minute because I talked about art in my show earlier on, and I said to him, you know, that this wasn't. I didn't mean it to be like a personal attack on him. It just happened to be the words fell out of his mouth last night, but have come out of the mouths of others.
What did he
what
say?
did
And
he
it,
say?
what he said was, it had to do with the conversation around the combo team for lacrosse between West
yes,
and
yes.
Memorial, and maybe others didn't notice it, but I was sitting in the chamber, and he said he was making a valid point, I think, which is about resources and all that stuff. And he said, look, he said to the administration, you know, as we continue with the declining population in our schools, have we looked at these issues? This is going to happen again and again. Before he completed that sentence, I gave a timeout signal if anybody was looking my direction from sitting behind in the back seat, and there's only 6 people in the chamber or so, and I'm like, and I was completely appalled. Not because I wanted, no, it's not about stringing out art for what he said. I mean, I understand where he's coming from, but like, when did it become okay? When did our public representatives accept the demise of our public school system, the continuing declining in its population, in this exciting, burgeoning, growing, dancing, singing, happening place where we've got army and we've got development and we've got a sense of buzz about downtown,
and plenty of empty storefronts.
and we have public representatives in our city, not least of whom Art Boardry, and it's not about picking on Art. I mean, like I said, I think a lot of people at the meeting might easily have let the same words fall out of their mouth.
But he's the vice chair.
No, but again, I'm not trying to hang him because of it. It's not about that. The point is the mindset. Why are we
you
even
couldn't get the
having
vote.
that? Why are we even having that conversation, right? If this was a town being developed, a new suburbia with brand new streets going in and more ticky-tack houses going up every month and a half of another 18-house subdivision, and one of the members of that community in the middle of their about to open their new library and build their new main street and they're fundraising for their new schools, and some sort of Luddite, backward-looking person say and says
And we back to Manchester
well
now?
in this city we're basically our best days are behind us and we're going to see decline now, and are we coping for decline? They'd be run out of the room. And so I've heard this from aldermen
Or out
again
of
and
town.
again. Like there's such a disconnect between our public representatives and their view of where the city is and where, especially around schools, and where it should be going. The lack of excitement and vision and drive and ambition and risk-taking for the future is appalling to
I
watch.
agree.
And if we didn't have Dr. Vargas here, who at least is wording some of those things for us and talking about a better future, and we have great music programs and we have great programs in our schools, and our schools might be the best in the state or could be the best in the state, he's saying some of those words. But he is surrounded by a political class that's committed to managing the slow demise of our schools.
slowed them up,
Well, in
They're
some cases,
committed to
Here-
driving it right down into
and
the,
then next
but
step in
here's
that would
the
have to be-
reality.
Yeah.
the reality, according to Russ Terrio,
Yeah, well-
candidate for state
Well, he's the
rep.
only one we have here, so let's see what he has to say.
You'll be
As opposed to John Hopwood, who's completely divorced from reality.
Wow, it's a different reality.
I'm going to leave you guys.
Oh, wait. So, Jim, I want to answer your question.
Futuristic
Stay for a
conversation.
few more minutes and then
The
bash
population
it
of
for a minute.
Manchester has been very stable over the years.
Yeah, 'cause nobody wants to live here
110,000.
anymore.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. The school age population of children has declined greatly. And a lot of our students were coming from out of town. And if we look at the demographics of especially New England, we're getting older and older. People aren't having as many children. But, remember, my parents, my dad was French and Irish Catholic, 6 kids. People in Manchester used to have big families. Well, they have, what's the average person having now? 1.5 children?
Yeah, I don't know what the numbers are.
But that's the reality. We're having a smaller. If it wasn't for immigration, this country, if you look at the countries with a lot of high birth rate, it's not in Western developed countries. So if
Right.
it wasn't for, we actually need immigration
So can I,
to keep up our student
Right,
population.
So let's say we take all of what you said as being true. I'm not saying you're telling any lies. I'm just saying
No.
if we just accept
Go
your
for it,
discussion,
Jim.
right, as it is, then you as a public representative are overseeing what you think is the slow decline in
I don't
in
call it a
size.
decline. That's the demographics.
Reduction. But you're not willing to do anything to undo that, right? You're not like because if we lived in North or South Carolina, if we lived in Florida, if we lived in Idaho,
Oh, I
if
see
we
what you're
lived in
saying. Yes,
Utah, if we
they're
lived in
getting
Colorado,
more-
if we lived in Texas, if we lived in Nevada,
Correct.
if we
That
right,
is correct.
right. So
People are moving south.
People are right.
They're moving
So-
to red Republican
right,
states and
right.
they're
So
fleeing,
where they send their
fleeing the
kids to
blue
private
Democrats.
Right, we've
schools
seen
and public
we've
schools
seen
are funded.
increases in the population of Massachusetts has begun to undo its outflow of population.
Okay.
When you see the big arrows of sort of movement from the northeast down to Florida and all that, and Massachusetts has done a very good job over the last 10 years of slowing or even eliminating. I think the most recent census they have increased population or inflows. They've got in and outward going. So there's been Boston is booming, the greater Boston area, and so they've done some of that. But New Hampshire was maybe even still is relying on this what is no longer evident, the New Hampshire advantage. I
think we're better than Vermont and Maine, but let me ask you a
Yeah,
question. though.
Irishmen
Let me
did
throw it
the
back in
breed
your
like
place.
the old
How do
days.
we solve the problem of an aging population with declining?
We
number of
attract
children?
in new families into our city.
And how do we do that?
And we start
By
with
raising taxes?
And we perhaps it's certainly one of the things you would look at, right? Because you can't if you want to buy a new house, you have to take out a mortgage. That's just the way it is, right? Or you can live. I'm not saying we're in a hovel, but you could live in a hovel in a rented hovel, and if you had the capacity to borrow money to build or to buy a nice house, and perhaps other people would come, or maybe you could find yourself a really nice wife and family to live in a nice house with you, and it would be an attractive place to go.
I've tried that, Jim.
So the only way you could do that is borrow money to do it. So the connection between investing in your community is the opposite of the average sort of fiscally conservative view, which is let's not invest, let's hide the money under the pillow and keep it for as long as we can. The more progressive way of doing things, and this is a fundamental difference, of course, is to actually to take wise economic decisions. So I would suggest that if you wanted to undo it, you would make Manchester, because as Manchester
again.
goes, so goes the rest of the state. So you would begin with things like improve. Since we have the least well-funded school system in the state, you would start right there. You do what Dover did. Dover decided 2 years ago to spend $86 million on a new high school, and it's leading its appeal to people. Then they're
Litchfield's more progressive
but they're
than
publicly
Manchester.
stating
Yeah.
we've invested $86 million in a new high school, and we're leading with what people come to Dover,
Right.
move to Dover. Look at what we've got for you. We've got a great education and a
attract
brand new
people,
facility,
yeah.
right? So that's how Dover has decided to move it. Manchester spends $10,000 a year on advertising the city. There are pizza places in Manchester that spend more than that in a month on public advertising and leafleting and brochures than the whole city of Manchester does. But we have an alderman who said who happens to be a Democratic alderman, who said at a board of mayor and alderman meeting 2 months ago, he talked about a new development off of North Elm Street, and he sat back from his chair and he, can you believe it? They're building 17 houses on Elm Street on North Elm Street. They're like $800,000 in Manchester? Are you kidding me?
That's because the property
No,
taxes
but
are lower.
hold on a minute. Like here's a public representative he is amazed. That man's amazed that anybody would ever want to come here.
I think we all were.
Who would ever? I'm not.
I was.
I happen to be a property owner here. I wish there was lots of houses valued at that, and because a rising tide would raise all boats. I'm talking about there is a divergence coming in Manchester public life between those who want to hold the line and keep us, back in the 1950s or take us back to the 1950s, and those who are ready to embrace,
Rich Gerard, 1930,
the or earlier. Get out your quill and ink. So it seems to me, the answer to Manchester would be to invest in the city. And I've used the example of the airport many times. If the airport in Manchester is a major driver for the economic benefit of the whole southern half of the state.
It's been declining in traffic, though.
We're supposed to have
it has
the rail line.
It has, and we could talk about some of the. But the fact is that it is a major economic driver for the economy of the southern half of the state. And if it were to be gone tomorrow, if it had never been built, we would have a huge sucking sound. So the wiser, smarter, more adventurous people in the past, public representatives, not private money, decided to invest in Grenier Field and grow a transportation hub that has been critical to the housing valuations of every house within 100 miles of where we are right now.
Especially within a mile. It shakes your house. You can't have conversations with the planes flying over.
Well, fine. But the fact that is a fact. That's an example of public infrastructure, right? Now, step forward 30 years, and we have a group of public representatives who will not fund a commuter rail line because it has to be done by private enterprise.
Ross wants it to go to Nashua, so they get all the economic development.
Baby steps.
So who want to? There are those on the school board with you, of course, who would be happy to see the entire defunding or mostly the defunding of the public school system.
No,
because
I don't want to see defunding.
No, I said there are some. Not you.
I don't know anybody on the school board.
So you don't know of people in the school board who have openly declared that they believe that public education is not various comments over time that the only way of reforming public education, first of all, it's in need of reform, and the only way to reform it is to tear it down. So it must be torn down.
Anybody's ever said that.
Yes, they have.
It's basically you're paraphrasing. They said that.
Yes. I'd have to go and find I'd have to go and find the exact quote.
Send that to me. Yeah,
I will.
I'm surprised.
But that's
sit
clear.
right next to
Well,
him.
you mentioned Richard. Richard Gerard said at a school board meeting 2 months ago that, and he disagreed with you. You were sitting next to him on the subject of whether he had some kind of fiduciary obligation to the public schools of Manchester.
Yes,
Did he represent the public schools of Manchester?
Yeah, I said basically. My point was, we're on the Manchester School Board, so that our fiduciary duty is to the Manchester School Board, not to charter. Although there are public charter schools that we're responsible for,
yes,
but a private charter school or a Catholic school is not our.
Right.
And
he didn't agree with that, so his thing was he represents, Catholic schools, Jewish schools, Muslim schools, non-affiliated schools, home schools, all children. I was being delivered. So I'm just saying that all of that. But I was surprised that there's a guy who's, and I use the analogy to say if there were a board at Trinity High School, and I ran for Trinity High School, and actually I don't believe in. And by the way, every time a substantial vote comes up to either add a teacher, increase the size of the classroom, bring in new technology, I vote against it every time because I'm on the board of Trinity High School and I refuse to see tuition go up and I won't spend another time. I don't have any kids there because I send them elsewhere, but I'll vote down that school every day of the week because, oh, by the way, and I'll tell you right at the board meeting with the other 12 people or 13 people of this imaginary board at Trinity that actually I'm sitting here voting on this stuff and I won't recuse myself, and I'm not really committed to the maintenance of this building at all. I'm not fully committed to it because I'm as much committed to Central and Memorial and MST and the charter schools as I am to this building. But damn it, I'm not getting off this board. I'm staying right here, and every time one of the other 13 of you actually wants to vote to reduce the number of kids in a classroom or whatever it is, I don't mean to malign and say that it's always the case, but I'll vote for, if you don't have the money, we're not doing it, we're not borrowing a dime, we're not increasing spending, we'll cut.
Well,
so
Jim, maybe
I see
someday
that as
the
an
Democrats will run somebody against.
I don't know.
Jim, was that a straw man argument?
None of your legal.
Yeah, I guess it was. No, there wasn't a straw man argument because it's real. It's not like
we'll burn the real witch.
But so my ultimate
so you hate witches.
my ultimate point
Not
is when
really.
we get to where we are tonight in the city of Manchester, where real decisions have to be made. You know, I go back to all the time when I look at kids in classrooms. You go into a special needs class, and there's a kid sitting in the corner, rocking back and forth, and you know they're supposed to have a per diem there, and the per diem's not there, and they're supposed to have visual sensory equipment and whatever else, and the school district in Manchester, can be brought into court and can be sued and then sued again. I've talked to people who were told.
nothing gets better.
I talked to a well-known gentleman in Manchester whose daughter was in a wheelchair, and he was told by a school in Manchester when there was no way to get her from, she had to be carried, her chair had to be carried from a room, right, because there were steps. It wasn't accessible. This is a couple of years ago.
But why?
But he asked a question. By the way, this is the past, so I'm not saying it's happening today, but it's the recent past. Yes. And he said he was told by the high school that. They carried her up and down the couple of steps to be in the room she was in. Her wheelchair was a very small thing, I guess. Picked the wheelchair up, and he said, what happens in the case of a fire? Like, if she has to get out herself as a 15-year-old, how should she get out of this room? And they said, well, we'll carry her out. And he's like, the ADA was passed, like 25 years ago. But I'm just saying, we know again and again and again the city of Manchester when it comes to special needs kids. I know it's something you must be very well aware of, and as a school board member as well as being aware of these things. We don't meet the legal requirements of IEPs for students on a regular basis.
So how do we get away with it, Jim? That's what I don't
Because you know what
understand.
happens in Manchester? If you have money and you have the ability to take the school district to court, you can actually force, keep at it and enforce it. But if you don't have the language, the resources, etc., or the money to take on the school board and the school district, then you'll be left without it. I mean, about school board members or people, let me say, not school board members, but people who have got some clout in this city,
I know,
who've been totally frustrated at the inability to get services from the city of Manchester.
I know people who have taken us to court. That's why our special education budget is exploding.
Right.
Because when we have to play them out of district, I've seen bills of over $100,000 for one student. So that just blows our big hole in our budget.
It is expensive. That's true.
And we don't
although
get
the state's supposed to step in above a certain. There's a formula that anything above a certain amount, the state's supposed to get in, but they're not really helping. The state and the federal government share special ed supposed to be, I think, 40%. They're supposed to pay 40% of the education. They're paying something like 17.
I think the federal's paying 17, right?
No, combined, I believe it's 17.
How does the state get out of it?
They just don't do it. So they have these unfunded mandates. The state and the federal government says you have to do this. You're on the hook, Mr. Local Taxpayer.
I just like to stop you right there. I'm sorry, I've talked a lot, but I just want to stop you right there because the unfunded federal mandate piece in this regard drives me a little nuts, and I'll tell you why. Because there are some in this city who throw that out as an excuse often, and I'm not accusing you of it. I'm saying is this. In this case, it's an if you call it an unfunded mandate, what we've mandated is we've shut down special, red brick hospitals and warehousing of kids in our state. And you can call it an unfunded federal mandate, an unfunded state mandate, an unfunded, people mandate. But we as a society decided 30 years ago that we would not do that, and we would give kids the most mainstream and the least restricted.
And I agree. So let me stop you there. But here's the problem, and it probably wasn't as diplomatic as we have to educate everybody.
Right.
But when the government isn't paying their share, so we have the highest level of poverty. New Hampshire's a great place to live, but Manchester has the highest level of poverty, and I believe, at least in our adult population, probably in our children population, the highest level of disability. So we have a double whammy of poor people and disabled people.
Right.
It's expensive to educate them. So when the government says we're going to pay you 40% and they're only paying you 17%, that falls to people the poor people of Manchester that pay it. So I believe that the federal government, the state government should be paying their fair share.
I do too. I just was pushing back against the federal mandate thing because it falls under the sort of, some out of control bureaucratic agency that says we want you to march on the left side of the street and pay you, therefore you must draw a line down the middle of the street and we're making you spend it. In this case, a federal mandate is making us just do what everybody should be doing, is that a kid in a wheelchair should have a ramp. that a kid who's got special needs should have facilitated to the best of our ability to allow them to be the best person they can be over time. That's a federal. So just federal mandate is used as a pejorative term often in these conversations, and it really bugs me among particularly there are one or two individuals in the city who constantly, when they're caught in the discussion, I've often had conversations about the resource issue, and we get down to it, and they say, well, we just can't afford it, and I'm like, well, fine. So what are we all going to do now? Because we've gotten to there as two opposite politically minded people. We've agreed the resources aren't there. So how do we solve that problem? And let's start. And then the squeeze out. I have them right at the point of let's talk about how we fix the problem. And they see federal mandates. There's unfunded federal mandates. And I've shouted like.
So they would consider that you have to. A disability, that's a federal law, the ADA, because it mandates the education.
So the problem is that on a political spectrum thing, right? The unfunded, even though as a progressive, I'm very much, I don't want to see any unfunded mandates, but it divides people.
But you still vote for Maggie Hassan and Jean Shaheen
Hassan,
and Porter, Carol Shade Porter, and Annie Custer.
I don't know how he can vote in two congressional districts.
He's a Democrat. He can do anything.
Those busloads. The busloads coming up from Massachusetts, the imaginary busload. No, but you know. So I agree with you. Like there should be better funding. But the very
you
people
touched about on voter fraud. Can I just touch that?
Oh, I don't want to. I have to go. Voter fraud is another red herring. I don't really.
No. They did say of people they could verify, but in talking to an election official, he said. A lot of people vote without a driver's license, and they let them, and it's not flagged. We don't even know who those people are.
So can we not? Let's just like let's.
Ridiculous.
The problem in the United States
Jim, take a breath.
The problem in the United States is not too many people voting. The problem is not enough people voting. You know, there's no reason why we couldn't have votes on the weekend. There's no reason why we couldn't have votes that start on Friday, go through Sunday night. There's no reason we could have absentee ballots.
This is not Ireland, Jim.
Well, they don't do it in Ireland. But I'm just saying, you know, we have this agrarian society model of having it on a Tuesday in the fall, right? Based on apple crops and corn. I mean, so if we actually wanted to, and that's just to call it like it is, right? You know what? And you won't agree with this, I'm sure, but there's voter suppression going on in the United States, right, to suppress votes, and it's no coincidence that the places we want to suppress votes are in places that are more likely to vote non-Republican than Republican, right? So that's
kind of like when Al Gore didn't want to count military votes.
The Litchfield.
I didn't know that. Did he not?
Yeah, he didn't. He didn't. The overseas military.
Well, he's talking about the court
and prisoner vote and prisoner votes. You know,
more
like
nonsense.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is when we come back to the sort of squeezing this all out is that clearly we should be funding our school system. We have the least well public funded school system in the United States in the state of New Hampshire. In our university system, right? We fund it less than everybody else. We're wondering why we lose students. We have students coming out of Memorial and Central and West and now MST and heading off. And you know we have a great school at the University of New Hampshire. We have part of the New Hampshire system. A good school. We have Keene State, which is losing employees and firing people because of declining population.
People, laying them off.
They've laid off people this year. This coming into this next year, they've laid off people this current year. So, but you know, the largest cut in public education in the history of America, percentage-wise, across any state, was done by the Bill O'Brien led Republican Party in
Good Irish name.
Yeah, it's good. There's many of them have fallen
from Massachusetts, by the way.
But the point,
but they bust them up.
So you know, you kind of get what you pay for in the end. There needs to be a solution. My problem is you can't have, and I know my friend. Or
what's the solution, Jim?
The solution is you actually have to put your hand in your pocket and you have to pay for the services that you desire, and you have to decide which services you want. We decided a long time ago we like street lighting because it makes it easier for us to move around at night time.
See, the homeless people ask us for money.
There's no reason why you have to have street lighting. It's not a constitutional right. We could get rid of it tomorrow. We could shut those puppies down.
Not really.
But we as a people decide we want it, right? We don't want to open sewers in the middle of our streets anymore. anymore like we had in medieval Europe. So we actually have a sewerage system. You know, there are things we have. We have traffic lights now because we need traffic lights because it makes it easier for us to traverse the city from one side to the other. So we progress as a society, right? We're like holding the line, tax caps, and other things that say we're staying where we are, a la, in this case, 1990, or sorry, 2000, whatever, it's 2000. We're going to hold the line there, right? And I don't know for how many hundreds of years you want to hold it, but if we had a tax cap come in 1910, we would still have the horse manure people, dealing with the horse manure in the city, and there'd be no paving, no street lights. We'd have 4 cops, no police cars, right? So
what about the counter argument from the taxpayers that say they can't afford, high real estate?
All right, let me tell you something about taxpayers. So, as an example, right? I don't have the dates maybe right, but say 6 or 7 years, 8 years ago, gas was approaching, at the end of the Bush administration, gasoline was approaching $4 and up to $4.25 a gallon in the state of New Hampshire. Okay. Over the last 8 years, it has gone down to somewhere around the $2 mark, and $2.20, $2.10. No, that's where it is today. It's not even a $3 today.
It's $2.75.
Yeah, it was like $2.75.
That's where it is today, and it's been going up. Yeah. It's been going up for 6 months.
$3.
No, but for a long time, gas went down by almost 50%.
Yeah, it was cheap.
So I did the numbers on my show once and talked about the amount of money, extra money,
that was in the hand. The extra money out of the people's pocket to pay for taxes, right?
No. First of all, when you're not paying for taxes, taxes buy things. I want the things that taxes buy. I don't want tax. I don't want to pay a dime more tax than I have to. I'm just telling you. Ask me what do people do who can't afford it. Well, for instance, gas went up, and so we had a 50% reduction in gases 6 or 8 years ago, and that was great. And at that time, we were firing teachers, right? We were doing away with teachers as every household in Manchester got to drive around 50% of the tax.
People have more money in their pocket.
It's fungible, it's movable, right? It's in the right economic term. It's elastic, right? So there's elasticity there for the economists amongst us. And so right now, gas has gone up significantly in the last 2 months. It's gone from somewhere in the 245, 250,
about 40
255,
cents?
and it's gone up about 40 cents.
Yeah.
So or something. We're just using rough numbers tonight, but at least 40 cents. It's up around 280, 290. So it's a 20% increase in taxes or in gases. Now, gas is a serious amount of money for two-car families, and it's real money. They're spending maybe $100 a week extra, or at least $50 a week extra across a car family. That's $200 a month. For some families, $400 a month. There's nobody, The bars and restaurants of Manchester aren't shutting down, right? Cotton isn't putting up the for sale signs.
Well, the economy's doing good.
But yeah.
America's great again.
Perfect. So if that's true, then let's fund our schools. You just
you're
defeated your own. You just defeated your own argument.
If
people can afford, then if they can afford it, we're talking about the cost of we get mocked. I get mocked at school board meetings. We're talking about the cost of a couple of cups of coffee.
Who mocks you?
You feel like you're Rousseau.
There are the mockers and the non-mockers. The mockers mock. The non-mockers
but name
don't.
the mockers.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a shy person about naming people. I just don't have a name.
Art Bowdry's not one of them.
No, he's not. Art and I are good. I'm fine with Art.
Arthur is a good human being.
My problem.
I didn't say that.
So the issue is, Ross, right? You're a reasonable guy, right? You're sitting here. You have conservative viewpoints and that too. But no, but and that's fine. Fiscal conservatism, but you recognize, like anybody else, that the school system in Manchester does not have the resources that it needs.
One of the poorest funded.
Right. So at least in your conversations, at least in conversations with you, even though we might. I hope we will. But we might never reach, interim solutions or steps forward where we jointly agree. But at least we're not arguing with some who will say, you've got people in your party in Concord who openly say that public education is not a public good, should not be funded, and it's unconstitutional.
Yeah, it's a Protestant
we've people
idea.
in your party who've come before the school board and said that our public schools are ungodly. And that they are that because they are ungodly, spreading a whatever So those people are around you, and I'm sorry to but they swim in the same tank you're in, right? And so there are people at one extreme, I admit, who are anti-public education. They don't like it. They don't really want it. Betsy
But they don't have
DeVos.
much of a choice because there's a lot of federal laws and state laws in this
Well,
area.
Betsy DeVos is working very, very hard, very, very fast, as much as she can.
It's the best job that she can do.
And you know, the thing from yesterday with the Department of Education is now like, so they have now they won't allow states. It's about states' rights, and Betsy DeVos is a big states' rights person.
rights.
So she's being questioned in Congress today, and because the Federal Department of Education has said that states cannot enforce rules against student loan providers at the state level. That the state because they're federal loans,
Oh, yes.
that they can only be answerable to federal law and the Federal Department of Education. Now, there is a long history, as was enumerated in Congress today, of student loan providers paying fast and loose with the truth and with tricking people. And this is a long
Are
history.
you advocating taking out student loans to send people to public school?
But there are states. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Russ, you're dropping the ball.
And there is,
here.
but there,
You're coming back.
here's so Betsy DeVos. Besides taking $800 million out of the federal school program this year, which is a lot of money, because we'd like our 150 of that, if nothing else. I mean, because we're one of the 50 states.
So this is going to affect you and age.
Obama.
And
57 states.
President Obama said there were 57 states.
No, he was talking about Heinz.
Well, what do you
talking
expect
about,
before?
Well, you know, if you're going to be born in Kenya, that's
And,
not.
educated at
Which is,
Madras
can we
or
just
whatever
not?
it is.
I'm so tired of the Obama thing; it drives me nuts. But you know,
You didn't like him?
no, I liked Obama. No, actually, it's present tense. I do like Obama a lot. He didn't die or anything. He's still there. He's not president, of course, but we all know that. We see it in our every day. But the point
Peace
is
in Korea.
Our poetry?
No, peace in Korea.
Where's the peace? Where's the peace in Korea? I got to tell you, if you were a North Korean citizen today, and your family was boiling up mice that they caught in the kitchen for your dinner tomorrow night, you know, the kind of peace you're getting in Korea. Don't get me started. We know not. I think it would be great. We all want peace. I think it'd be great if we have peace in Korea, as you might describe it. I think that's a wonderful thing. I was incensed last night. I was actually listening to the BBC, but it was Radio 5, not the World Service, who know a little better. And the guys in Radio 5 were saying something about this as it was live happening, and we had that amazing propaganda video that went on. You know, the Trump-produced propaganda video, which was like martial music and will one leader step forward? It was great. You got to see the video. Did you see the video that was shown?
President Trump could be the second coming of Christ, and you'd still have something to criticize.
You do believe he is the
No, that's not
Christ,
true.
don't you,
That's
Russ
not true. That's
Terrio?
not true.
Him and Kim Il-jung are the same person.
I've always been. I think
gangsters.
it's very important for everybody to kind of think about this for a minute. When you're around for a little while, and even not so long, you know, I've never sold my soul, or even a little piece of it, to any politician. And
not even for a glass of whiskey?
Not even for a bucket of whiskey.
Oh, now you're being.
But no, you know, but there are those people who get very passionate during elections about whoever we don't know, for instance, who the candidate, say, in next presidential election is. Presuming let's say for some reason it's not going to be Trump. So let's say he decided not to run.
Yeah.
So none of us sitting here know who the candidate right now is going to be, or who's going to run against Trump if there's a primary in the Republican side. But there are going to be people 3 years from now who are going to be like shouting someone's name with placards outside some, you know, and pushing past each other to get in to listen to some who is going to be their second coming. This is the only guy who could be whoever he is.
Gone that I sold my vote for.
And this is true of both
Democrat.
Democrats and Republicans, right? So Democrats who like John Kerry or Al Gore, and at the times they were running, well, Al Gore was the answer. If you were a Democrat, he was your guy, and Al Gore was our answer, right?
Geez, looks
and
like
and there are
He
people
invented the internet.
but people are so
there.
are so fickle, right? That they'll just move on to the next guy. My point.
Finger of fate.
My point would be that if you're going to be involved in politics, like it should be about ideas and about proposals and solutions.
Politicians are porta-potty hookers.
The politics of personality are like that belongs in North Korea and should stay there.
Cult of personality.
And I would say the people on Republicans, Democrats, and the Green Party, and the Ralph Nader people, and everybody in between.
Bernie Sanders.
You know, Bernie Sanders, all of them. You know, this cult of personality thing. That's not like it's so ephemeral. It's not lasting. It goes away. The next guy steps up, and so all of a sudden, you know, because I have to be the candidate, I'm the answer to all your ills. It's ridiculous. The answer to all your ills should be: we want this kind of America. We want to move in this direction. We want to move in that direction. This is good. We need to improve that. Whatever.
That's why I'm gonna run for governor.
No,
How much does that cost? How much is a governor cost?
$100, I
100?
think?
Well, you offered me $75 to run for mayor. Was it 50?
Joe LaChance announced today that he's running in Ward 1, 2 at Flotario 1, 2, and 3.
I'm running 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah. And Joe, you know,
I like
Joe too. The problem is, you know, Joe and I.
Do you like him better than Art Beaudry?
Who, me? No, politically, I prefer Art Beaudry, and I hate to say, you know, Joe, like, you know,
make a big
I'd have Joe on my show, and
chair.
Joe's, you know, I've talked to Joe, and I don't want Joe to be hurt if he's watching this, and he might be, you know, we just disagree, you know, so, and politically we disagree.
Jim, were you supposed to go somewhere? We got 5 minutes
Yeah,
left.
I'm late. I gotta.
Jim, when
You might as well stay.
No,
the rest of the show.
you know, there
We'll
was
leave.
wonderful
We're going to
ideas.
leave a little early. Are you
So
going to
the
go to the
Robert
meeting?
Tonight?
Are you going to the meeting?
I am.
Oh,
right
shoot,
now.
I forgot,
Yeah,
yeah.
starting at
So
8.
we'll get out a little early today.
Wipe
it up with 2
I'd like
minutes,
to
Jim.
share this with you because I remember Tom Brennan, Lord of mercy on his soul, saying to me, and I've repeated this many times, coming out of a school board meeting or an aldermanic meeting, I don't remember which, it was probably a school board meeting, but it's not that he and I were especially close or anything like that, but we talked, and we didn't always agree, etc., but we talked, and I respected the man, and we were coming over a meeting one day, and it had been one of those, like the meeting the other night, just a stupid, purposeless, frustrating.
And yet you still come.
I bet Art Beaudry was.
Well, because you know this is like wishing President Trump ill when he's the captain of the ship that we're in.
Bill Maher.
Well,
I wouldn't want to hurt.
Well, you know,
you go bad.
But if you're guided by people like Bill Maher, then you know I'm just saying
he's a standard run-of-the-mill Democrat. Right?
I wouldn't believe so. I don't think so, and I don't think you do either, actually. But anyway, so let me just say, right? So he said coming out of a meeting one day, he said. When did being a public representative, I think I said this to you before, when did being a public representative in a little city like Manchester become such a big deal?
I think it was around the time Art Beaudry.
And that's where I go back to the thing about sort of the I'm not accusing you of this, right, but the sort of self-importance, the inflated self-importance of people, like do the right thing for the city, do the right thing for the people. It's not that hard. It's not about, like, first of all, lose the affinity for the seat and the need to be re-elected. I'm not advising you, I'm saying just generally. I say this about Joyce Craig. People say to me, you know, well, you know, if Joyce Craig, if, you know, she has to stay with the tax cap, whether she likes it or not, and we don't want Joyce Craig to be a one-term mayor. And you know, I've heard those conversations within.
Which I agree with.
But fine, that's the realpolitik. I'm not in politics because I don't want to be involved in realpolitik. Because my argument is, I don't mean to be self-righteous.
It is true. You
but
that is your.
No, I don't want to be a critic. No, I don't want to be a critic. I want to hold. I want to hold people to a higher standard.
He knows Alexander Pope. You don't.
Those that you do, those that don't criticize.
No, that's not true.
Teach. And then those that can't teach Jim, which is vicious.
But
that's on T.
There are quotes, more quotes, and misquotes. That was a misquote.
He knows. He knows his quotes.
So the thing. So to me, I like to hold the people to a higher standard because I would say lose the affinity for the seat. There's no, you know, if the choice is between getting a second term as mayor and doing the right thing by the children of Manchester, do the right thing by the children of Manchester and be able to look at yourself in the mirror. Because there are people on the public boards in Manchester over the last 10 years, and when we look back at this period in history, and whether it comes out for good or ill, if it's seen as the nadir and we rise out of it, or if it's seen as the beginning of decline or the end of the decline in Manchester, if that's where we are, there are people later in life who are going to say, I was a public representative during that 10-year period, and I either stayed quiet and did nothing, or I went along to get along. Did not stand up for the kids in Manchester.
That old saying, they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't say anything because I wasn't a trade unionist.
That's it. We're going to say goodbye, and I just want to, from your stirring speech, I want the entire school board to resign now. Except Joyce Craig.
What, that's kind of sexism.
I'm going to leave you guys to these conversations.
No, we're going. Bye.
It's been fun. Ross.
Hi, I'm Senator Lou D'Alessandro, and I encourage everyone to listen to Matt Cunnerton, Unleash